This week, Mayor Adams announced a partnership with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine to provide every New York healthcare practitioner with free introductory training in nutrition and lifestyle medicine so they can integrate evidence-based content into their practices. What an amazing announcement! Tonight's guest is already working in our city's medical system and is blazing a trail by partnering with doctors to integrate the pillars of lifestyle medicine into the health of their patients. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jim Spellos, and welcome to another edition of Changemakers, where we get to spend some quality time with people in our community, making a huge difference in lives, their own, their families, and many others. And tonight, I'm just thrilled to be able to invite onto the screen Lily Correa, Master of Public Health, registered dietitian, all sorts of long acronyms that if I read them all, we'd run out of time. But a quick bio on Lily. She's the Director of Education and Training for the Office of Nutrition and Lifestyle Medicine at NYC Health Hospitals and is the registered dietitian for the Bellevue Hospital's plant-based lifestyle medicine program. She's passionate about plant-based nutrition and firmly believes the kitchen is the greatest tool for promoting optimal health and wellness. Lily graduated from Loma Linda University in 2014, where she obtained a Master of Public Health with a concentration in nutrition and dietetics. She's presented on topics of nutrition and lifestyle medicine at numerous national and international conferences for community-based organizations. Lily, a pleasure. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, James. An honor to be here.
So, new position at New York Health Hospitals. Tell us more. Tell us about what you do there and what that program's all about, and in particular, what you're doing there.
Yes. So, our Bellevue plant-based lifestyle medicine program started back in 2019 as a pilot, and I came on as a registered dietitian for the program. And since then, there was a series of steps that we became an official part of Bellevue Hospital, and then we are made an announcement this year also by Mayor Adams that we're expanding the model of our clinic to 6 additional facilities within New York. And so the Office of Nutrition and Lifestyle Medicine was created in order to lead those efforts. And our executive director is Dr. Michelle McMacken. So under her leadership, she created a team of us, and that's the new role that I have for NYC Health Hospitals is the Director of Education and Training. And what I'll be doing in that role is helping to train the clinicians that come on to our new clinics, which we're looking to expand in all 5 boroughs of New York City so that we can make lifestyle medicine services accessible to even more New Yorkers.
You must have been so excited to hear Mayor Adams' announcement yesterday.
Oh, yes, definitely.
It's incredible. So you're going to be working more with the clinicians or more with patients, or is your job going to be split between the two?
Yeah, so right now my job is split between the two, and I'm working a couple of days as the Director of Education and Training, where I'm helping to roll out training plans for the clinicians, and I'll be working hands-on with them as well when they come on as we hire people on, and still working 3 days at Bellevue as the registered dietitian for the program.
So when is this going to start rolling out to the other hospitals in the system?
So right now we are in the phase of putting out the job positions and hiring and interviewing and all of that process. So everything is falling into place in that realm, and we're hoping to roll out by next year.
Cool. What got you interested in nutrition in the first place?
So I had a couple of pathways that brought me into nutrition. I was always interested in health and fitness, wellness through playing sports growing up. So I played volleyball in high school and in college. And this is one of the pathways that took me towards nutrition. I was playing volleyball at a time where vegetarian diets, plant-based diets was seen as inferior, right, for competitive purposes. And so I played alongside athletes who had been plant-based all their lives, guys in the basketball team, other girls in the volleyball team. And I really saw no difference in their performance. And so it just made me really curious about what all of this was about, that plant-based diets were deemed inferior for sports performance. So that got me really curious in that realm around nutrition. I didn't make it into the nutrition field until I actually was teaching. So English literature is my first field that I was in. And so I was actually taking a class as part of faculty benefits. I took a nutrition course when I was teaching over at Andrews University in Michigan. And man, when I was at that course, I just fell in love with nutrition. And there's when I realized that I really liked English a lot. I love that I did, this as a first part of my working, career, my professional career. But then I saw that I was maybe teaching in the wrong subject because I really loved nutrition. So that's when I decided to go to Loma Linda.
But it's clear to state that your career path has not had a straight line from English to nutrition and then nutrition, but then there's this middle area where you became a chef. Tell us about that.
Right. So while actually I was working, after I graduated from Loma Linda, I worked at Kaiser Permanente. It was my first job out of school. And I was so incredibly blessed to be able to land at this outpatient clinic that had a demonstration kitchen. And there I worked alongside Dr. Columbus Batiste, who was the chief of cardiology at that time, and another colleague, Heidi Patterson, who had been my preceptor at that internship that I was doing there. But they had a whole food, plant-based demo kitchen. And so I was able to practice in that kitchen, and I started leading out on the Spanish language classes, as well as being the sous chef for the demonstrations with Dr. Batiste. So we had a series called The Doc and the Dietitian, and it was really fun. It always filled up. We always had at least 50 people sign on to our cooking demos, and we were making a heart-healthy, delicious, plant-based food for people. And it was really there that I saw, this need for myself to round out my dietetics career by learning more, and getting more immersed in this culinary field. So that's when I learned about this program here in New York, the Natural Gourmet Institute, that is a health predominant culinary arts program. And it was 85% plant-based. So I decided to take kind of a sabbatical from my job there and move here for 6 months to do the program.
So tell us about the program. That sounds really interesting, and I hadn't heard about it until we started talking. So it's an almost entirely plant-based cooking program?
Yes, so health supportive, I guess I should say, culinary arts. And so it was really, really great. It's a small program, so there was 12 of us in our class, and very intense. It was an everyday thing for 6 months. And yeah, we learned how to make plant-based food dishes really taste delicious. Sauces, dips, just all manners of cuisine we learned there.
So let's go a little further back, because obviously if you have an interest in food, that probably came from family.
Yes.
So talk to us about your background. I know I'd seen you on Chef AJ a while back, and you were cooking up a storm there, and there's some side conversation about lima beans I think we need to have at some point. But who's your inspiration? Was your mom, your grandmom, any other member of your family in terms of getting you interested in cooking?
So really both. I am really lucky to come from a line of really great cooks in my family. My grandma and my mom are both amazing cooks. And I grew up in Lima, in Peru, where there's a very rich culinary history. I mean, even nowadays, it's a world recognized cuisine, World Culinary Award winners, travel awards, like 5 years in a row, I think already. So really what's great about Peru is that the diversity, of all of the different ingredients that we can use there. So I grew up really having a lot of plant-based foods, actually. I was thinking about that today. My grandma always cooked legumes. That was the star of the plate.
Mm-hmm.
Our arroz, frijoles, and if we did have chicken or fish or anything like that, it was always a small condiment of the plate, right? But very rich in legumes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sort of that Blue Zones conversation that if they do have meat or fish or anything, it's a side dish and it's not the main part.
Mm-hmm.
So you were part of a family that loved to cook. Did Peru have a big plant-based community at that time?
It didn't at that time, as at least as I remember it. But nowadays, it has really blown up over there. And it's just so cool to see because when I started venturing into the plant-based world myself, I really discovered what I like to talk to my patients about, which is a colorful culinary adventure. Most of us rotate 5 to 6 different dishes, and we have our go-tos, right? And we kind of stick to that. But oftentimes we don't what I call eat outside the box, right? So when you start to discover all of these different ingredients that you can work with, these different colorful vegetables, right? It's just like a whole world opens up.
Yeah, so when you're first talking to patients, as you mentioned, eating outside the box, are you directing them towards certain ingredients, or are you trying to pull from their culinary background and their cultural background?
It's very personal, very personalized, because food is very personal, right?
Mhm.
A lot of culture tied into it, traditions, and we really want to make sure that the patient is, first looking at what they're already eating, right? And what they're already familiar. For example, what plant-based foods they're already familiar with, and we work from there. Definitely want to make sure that it's culturally appropriate for where they come from, and so we make sure that to take it into account all of that.
When they get to you, is there resistance at that point still about making that transition, or where are they on that journey at that point when you first see them?
Mhm. Well, we have patients who come in all different places, and I always tell them, wherever you're at works, right? Because really it is a personalized experience. I mean, what we do is we present the evidence, and we know from the research that the further along a plant-based spectrum a person can go, right, then there's a lot of benefit for health outcomes. So from there, we work towards wherever the patient, adding in versus
Mhm.
taking away. That's always the concept, right? That crowding out concept. We're adding in helpful ingredients, adding in more vegetables, more fruits, cooking with different grains, right? And all of it becomes, even just a piece by piece approach. Definitely.
Is there a starting food that you find triggers a lot of people to want to explore more? Or again, as you said, is it just personal to everybody in terms of, what their family history and what their culture is?
Absolutely. And within that, I also do have my general recommendation for
Mhm.
people, which is a starting point, which is always oats.
Mhm.
Oatmeal is my thing, right? Because it can be cooked in so many ways. It's such a familiar food. It's so accessible, so affordable, right? It can be made savory, it can be made sweet, it can be made, right, overnight oats, cooked oats. So there's just so many varieties of ways to work with oats that's the first avenue that I explore with people, right? Even if they haven't had it. Hey,
Mhm.
what do you think about? Have you ever tried? Because people have heard about oatmeal even if they've never eaten it, right? It's very
But
familiar.
overnight oats is a foreign concept to a lot of people. They can't figure out that you can just put it in plant milk and wake up in the morning and have it ready to go.
Dude, I'm telling you, the overnight oats concept is mind blowing to a lot of people, and it's so cool to see that it's that once they start getting into it, they really get into it, like making all of these different toppings for it, and prepping a different way, using the mason jars, and it's so easy, quick. They love it. It's convenient.
Mhm.
It's very a lot of comments around how life changing just that piece was.
Yeah, I could imagine. Is breakfast that easy transitional meal for a lot of people?
That's the first one that I usually start with.
Mhm.
And besides oats, once we get from there, then we will move into something like tofu scramble, for example.
Mhm.
And we start to look at what are some replacements that you might be willing to try. If you like an egg scramble, maybe you're willing to try a tofu scramble. Here's how you do it. And that's where the culinary piece comes in, right? Because I definitely saw when I was working in the kitchen that face, right, that lights up when you taste something and you're like, wow, healthy food can actually taste delicious, right? That's what we need. And so being able for me to walk a patient through a recipe, to be able to walk somebody through, oh, if you don't have this in your house, you can use this instead, try it with this. That was gold. That helped me to complete, right?
Do you ever get a chance to cook with them, or you're just sending them on their way and they're reporting back to you?
So, due to the nature of our virtual classes now, I don't get to cook alongside our patients. We pulled off one cooking demo before the pandemic shut us down, a live cooking demo. And it was this whole to do to get permissions to do it at Bellevue in the atrium. And we had a really good showing. It was cool. We did tempeh tacos, something familiar. So I always talk about like tempeh taco Tuesday. I like alliteration. That's where my English background comes in a little bit. Right? So tempeh tacos, and we did these chickpea salad sandwiches, right? Because we wanted to present something to substitute maybe a tuna salad sandwich that was also easy to prepare out of a can, right? So we did those little sandwiches, and then we did these carrot cake bites, which is just the raw, with dates and raw carrots. You just like put them in the food processor, and then spices like cloves and nutmeg and cinnamon, a little bit of almond flour, and it's very nice tasting. No oven required.
No, it's great. But you talked about oatmeal and overnight oats being that revelation. Chickpeas.
Yeah.
And the tuna fish, no tuna, and the aquafaba, to me, is also a huge revelation for so many people. It's like, what can you do with that?
Yeah, that is another one, that really when we talk to people in class, because for our program, people are entering into a 24-week class series that's composed of 14 weeks of what we call the Lifestyle Starter Series that covers all 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, and then 8 weeks of exercise, right? And we have a couple of weeks in between there for questions and things like that, Q&A sessions. But
I'm glad you brought that up, because I'd love for you to talk about the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine for anybody listening tonight and watching tonight who doesn't necessarily know them by heart.
Sure. So I'll finish the comment of that we mentioned that aquafaba in one of our classes, and people are just blown away that you can take the water, from the chickpea can, and just, if you beat it, kind of like you beat eggs, right? You create that meringue, that foam. It's really interesting. Okay, so the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. So what's really cool about lifestyle medicine is that it centers around these 6 pillars, which are nutrition based on plant forward whole foods, exercise, stress management, sleep, avoiding risky substances, and healthy relationships. So really all aspects of a whole life that when we talk to patients about it, it can clearly be seen that you or I, right, we're the only ones that can make moves in each of those 6 pillars. So it's really empowering, because when we take steps to, let's say, towards better nutrition, when we take steps in exercise, so 10-minute walk, after a meal, for example, small steps, we start to see the really big difference. And that's something that I did, right? So it's empowering because I'm the driver of my own health, right? Instead of being a passive recipient of health, like we might be in a conventional medical approach, in lifestyle medicine, we, the practitioners, are here to empower you to be the conductor of your own health.
And that message is typically received very well by people. Or are they surprised to hear that they're responsible for their good health?
Well, the way that we also talk about it too, because when we talk about a word like responsibility, Jim, we also have to see that there is built environment, there's social determinants of health, right? So there is a lot of aspects that can then come into a conversation around a person's health, right? But the way that we talk about the steps that one can take within the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine is that there is something that I can do to help to achieve better outcomes for my health, right? An upgrade is what I like to call it, right? So instead of making changes, making upgrades.
I want to focus on that word, because I've heard you use that before, and it's brilliant. And I think everybody who's listening and watching tonight will steal that idea. But the way I heard it is that you talk about lifestyle upgrades as opposed to changes. How did you come up with that? That really is such a great, positive way to get people moving in that direction.
So I actually did a sports nutrition internship with a company called Exos, and it was one of their models that, the language that they used, I thought was really powerful in their education. And one of those words was upgrade, right? And the way that I took that is when we look at language and how powerful language is, right? And we look at something, the word change, that can bring negative connotations. For us as human beings, we're creatures of habit. Change can be like a little trepidation around that, right? And so we might be a little more hesitant when we using the word change. But if we shift the context to using the word upgrade, when you upgrade your phone, for example, right? You don't want to go back to that old model. So it is a word that has a positive connotation, and so that's one of the reasons why I use it.
Which is great. And do you use it only in the nutrition context? Do you use it across all the pillars?
Across all the pillars.
Yeah, it would make sense. But again, I bet you people haven't thought about it that way. So when you pose that comment to them, I get a lot of puzzled looks going, upgrade? No, really? But it changes the game. So I was writing some notes down beforehand, and one of the things that I'm curious about is what do you think is more effective for you right now? Is it the education you're doing, or is it getting back to a hands-on demo for the culinary tools? What resonates more with the patients in the nutrition area of the lifestyle medicine? Conversation or demo?
Yeah, I think there has to be a combination of both there. But what I think will resonate more is definitely a hands-on demonstration, a tasting, something where you can see and feel and taste what this is going to be like, or what this can be like. And you can imagine it for yourself, right? You can imagine yourself making something like this. And so that is something we're working towards. Right now, we are doing virtual cooking demos.
Mm.
And then in the future, we're really looking towards partnering even with organizations to do more hands-on, because that's what patients always ask for: recipes, 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 right?
It's
Yeah.
one of the things we here at Plant Power did early on during the pandemic. We put together an app with 400 recipes in both English and Spanish, all plant-based, and primarily all SOS free as well.
Mhm.
So that's what people want. I mean, no matter what you say to them, it's like, "Well, give me a recipe. What do I make Tuesday night?"
Yes, yes, because it feels a lot. See, one of the things that I'll say in terms of my dietetics education is that my inpatient rotation, I would sometimes feel like I am giving patient a discharge paper with a list of foods that they cannot eat, right? Or they should stay away from. So I would call that the no list, right?
Mhm.
But there wasn't as much of a yes list. And that's really when patients came into the outpatient setting and would sit with me, they would show me something that their physician gave them or the dietitian gave them, after their hospital stay, and they would just be at a loss. What do I eat? Right?
Yet the beautiful thing about eating plant-based is the yes list is so huge. There's so many options that we can eat on a regular basis. I know my wife and I both talk about this, that
Mhm.
it's more creative in the kitchen now than it was when we used to put a piece of meat and then maybe one vegetable. So do you think some part of the issue that you're having and that we're having as a community is that people don't know how to cook and they've gotten away from those core tools? Is that a problem that you're seeing in a lot of your relationships with your patients?
So, that's an interesting. Also, I think it varies by location, it varies by population. But I would say moving to New York, this is a place that takeout food or restaurants are so incredibly accessible, and it is the culture of New York, right? To eat out, to get takeout, and it's just so easy that I think that almost like negates a need at some point to cook. There's also the size of places, the kitchens. A
Mhm.
lot of people are living in spaces that are very very small with very very small kitchens. So it's also a barrier there, right? It's inconvenient to cook. So that's why I mean by looking at location, right?
Mm.
Location. And so there's a lot of different aspects. And in terms of um, cooking education or learning, having grown up learning how to cook, yeah, it depends, right? Where you grew up or how you grew up too. And again, the space or the culture, which is here, very much an eating out or takeout culture. I have to tell you, even for myself, I've never lived in a place where I myself have eaten out at restaurants so much.
Mhm.
New York, yeah.
It's New York, and it's not New York, not only eating out, but the delivery, which before it happened, before Uber Eats, before any of that, places in New York delivered all the time. That was part of, what I wanted mom to get a delivery. It was so cool and amazing.
Yeah.
We only have a few minutes, and I have about 47 other questions, but a couple of quick questions for you. Number, we've talked enough about food. What's your favorite recipe? What's your go-to?
Oh, I do. So I do have a couple of go-tos that I make very often, and one is spiced red lentil kale tomato soup that I actually got from the first book that a friend gifted me when I started dabbling in the plant-based world was Oh She Glows from Angela Liddon. And she's got this recipe in there that I've added in a few things over the years that are my own, but it's such a great, easy, quick recipe. I give it out to all my patients because it's almost always a win. I would say 99% of the time, patients come back and they're like, "Yep, this was easy. It was delicious. I can do this." Right? Because you always have to have those recipes up your sleeve that they're easy, they're tasty, right? And it helps people grow that self-efficacy. I can do this, right?
Foolproof, that they can't mess up, they can't do anything that makes it not work.
Yeah.
I want to double back. We just got a question in about the lifestyle medicine information, and that is regarding the announcement. Will it be optional or required? Do you know, for the New York City healthcare providers?
Yeah, so this is optional for, yeah, and then they could get continuing education units for it.
Fantastic. And that was the other part of the question, which is they can't get continuing education, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
So now, you're a very lucky person because you've worked not only for Dr. McMacken, but Dr. Batiste.
Yep.
So a lot of people go, really, so who's better to work with?
Oh man, don't do that to me, Jay.
Nah. Oh, only kidding. We were fortunate enough to be able to interview Dr. Batista last week on our Planathon. What an amazing individual he is. Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
yes, very cool.
So one other question, and I'll let you go,
Mhm.
and that is there a question that you wish your patients asked you about nutrition that's never been asked before?
Wow, that's a sinker, Jim.
That's why we ask it last. Otherwise, it'll kill the whole interview, right?
Right. um, I think that our the patient interviews tend to go in many directions, and I've found that we cover most things that I'd like patients to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to share more about Peruvian cuisine. So maybe just on a personal note, because I want to get into knowing more about my own culinary background in that sense, Peruvian cuisine.
Okay, so we'll make that the last question. What is a great Peruvian recipe that we all need to know about?
So actually, when I was on with Chef AJ, I made this Peruvian lima bean stew that I really love. And it's my mom and my grandma's recipe, and it's warm and it's comforting, and it feels like home for me.
Isn't that what food's all about?
Absolutely.
So you cooking for the holidays?
Oh yeah. Yes. I will.
And yeah, it isn't the holidays without being able to share the food, and lucky enough to be able to share healthy food with a lot of people. So lastly, what's next? You have your new position, you're just going right in there and trying to figure out how you can help as many people as possible?
Yeah, we have a great team behind us. Very, very fortunate under the leadership of Dr. Michelle McMacken, who, as you know, is just an amazing trailblazer, and just looking forward to rolling out these programs and, like you said, being able to reach as many people as possible.
That is amazing. And we've gotten some nice comments coming in for your community service and commitment to our community, which I completely echo. Lily Correa, it has been an absolute pleasure. The time flew by. Happy holidays, and thanks so much for being part of Changemakers tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, Jim.
And thank all of you for being part of Changemakers. We wish you happy holiday season, and we look forward to more episodes coming up in early 2023. Take care, everyone.